So here we have in the room Phil Hoffman from DNR, Robin Traxler from Department of Transportation, Sarah Shellstead from Mental Health, John Pendergast from Medicaid, Traylene Hines from EPA, and we have enterprise planning team and Decision Lens product team and support team. Okay?
Okay.
And online, can you read the names? Greg Burskirk from OFCC, Tina Chubb from Insurance. Who else is there? Bill Cahill from Department of Developmental Disabilities. Kara Peterson from DRC. And Gary Waugh from Education. We all have all of them online. Okay, so first I will introduce what is enterprise planning. What is enterprise planning? OIT and state CIO has responsibilities for statewide IT governance function. Enterprise planning is a part of this governance function that supports the state CIO office. Our main focus is strategic alignment, through which we ensure all agency IT investments are in alignment with enterprise strategy that is set by the state CIO. In enterprise planning process, we serve two main customer groups. They are our key stakeholders. They are all state agencies and boards and commissions, and also OIT service owners. Most of the planning processes that we have revolve around these two groups. That's why they are our key stakeholders. And we take this very seriously. We work with state agencies and we serve the state agencies to our fullest ability. I will give you an overview of what our planning process constitutes. At the start of every budget cycle, it could be a fiscal year or a biennium, enterprise planning collects agency initiatives, also called investments, to ensure strategic alignment. Specifically for this collection cycle, we are requesting for fiscal year 19 initiative updates and also any newly planned fiscal year 20 and 21 investments. What we do with this data collection is we analyze the data to identify shared services, collaboration opportunities amongst agencies, standardization opportunities, and volume purchase opportunities. Planning team works very closely with other OIT teams during this analysis process to accomplish these outcomes. Outside of DAS, planning team also works to integrate the planning process with agency governance process, and also, this is new, OBM's budget management and value management process through the major project oversight policy. I will address that policy a little bit later down the road in a couple of slides later. If you have questions, we will discuss it, and if there is any follow-up discussions required, we can accommodate that as well. So I said planning team collects the agency initiatives. What agency initiatives are required in this portfolio? So we have put together a criteria document that answers all your questions. Should this initiative in my agency to be updated in the portfolio? I'll go through the document momentarily. This document identifies what initiative should go into the portfolio, and it also accommodates major project oversight policy criteria. I'm going to bring up, I sent you a slide deck yesterday and also sent this policy, the criteria document, which is what you see here on the screen. It's very important that you understand these criteria. It has a lot of details. I'm going to go through a little bit at a higher level. It is right now in circulation. Betsy Beshore, Katrina, and I, we are attending line of business meetings. We are sharing this document with all your agency CIOs, deputy CIOs, chief technology officers. So agency leadership is familiar with this document. It's approved by state CIO and the tech board. I'll go through these criteria, and if there are any questions, please feel free to interrupt and ask me. So the first criteria is if any initiative is executive, legislative, or federal mandate. If that is the case, you include that in EPP. EPP is a short form for Enterprise Planning Portfolio. Add that. Agency impact and constituent facing. What does that mean? If your initiative is serving, or the service in your agency is serving the vulnerable populations. Examples that come to my mind: Job and Family Services has electronics benefits. So that is one example. I'm sure in mental health, DNR, we have Medicaid, have several examples like that. So that alone is not that alone is a criteria for you to put it in planning portfolio. Financial value exceeds $5 million, automatically goes into the portfolio. Enterprise service is if you have an initiative that is accommodated into the roadmap of ODX, the digital experience, or anything like server consolidation, Ohio One Network consolidation, any initiative like that, it automatically goes into your agency portfolio. If there is a collaboration with multiple agencies, multiple participants, it goes into IT strategic priority. State CIO a few months ago released what are the priorities for fiscal year 19 to 21, and the list has been identified here: machine learning, cloud, analytics, DevOps, ODX, which is the digital experience service, mobile, process automation, security, paperless government. All these are different priorities. If anything like that goes into the portfolio. And last but not least, what we are asking is this one, we don't want like any renewals or product renewals, those kind of smaller items in different initiative into decisions. We don't want that. It would dilute the portfolio. But if you would like, you can say these are our annual renewals or something like that, and then you can attach document. Decision Lens would allow you to add a document, and you can say these are our upcoming renewals or something. We would use that information if there is anything new, and we can work with our service owners to get their approval in advance, so we don't hold you up for these conversations at the time of release and permit. So I covered what are all the different criteria and how you would look at these criteria to determine the initiative goes into the portfolio. In addition to that, there is a element added to your initiative in Decision Lens, and that's called Major Project Oversight. You would see something called MPO, which is just yes or no value. If it is a legislative mandate, you just check that field. And if it is an agency impact constituent facing, in addition to that criteria, you have to see if the value of your the life cycle cost of that project or service exceeds 2.5 million, equals or exceeds. Then you select that column. Any questions you have on this, you can talk to Ken or Mark from my team. Send an email to I think it's DAS Planning Manager. I don't remember exactly what is that. Or call us. We're all available for you to answer the question. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all of the MP criteria, but it is documented here. If it's a multi-agency, multi-participant, check the dollar value. If it's equal to or greater than 2.5, MPO should be selected yes. So, and what I would request is, it would be nice for you as a gatekeeper of your agency portfolio to understand this, but then also socialize this document with other folks like application managers and project management chiefs, because it would help them to understand when it should be flagged. And the reason, so EPP accommodates major project oversight because according to this policy, planning team will be sharing this information with OBM. Okay. How many of you here in person are familiar with major project oversight? I just want to know if you're aware of it. If not, how much support or like a sharing of the information through OBM site I can provide. That's why I'm asking that question. So if you like, I can follow up and send what is the link where this policy can be found. You read the policy and then you read this in conjunction. This is like, this one is the planning portfolio is DAS responsibility, but it accommodates major project criteria. So there is a strong collaboration between DAS and OBM. Okay. Anybody online? Anyone has questions about this criteria, major project oversight? Before I move on to the next slide.
No.
Vanitha? Vanitha?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, I have one question. As far as the dollar amounts at the very bottom, if it's under that, then we don't have to worry about it?
Yes. See, so for the first one, executive, legislative, or federal mandate, no dollar amount. If that's the only criteria, you have to select major project checkbox. If it is other, like, so the second one, the second column there, it's referring to the mission critical business processes in your agency. So most of DAS initiatives like business gateway, e-licensing, all that would fall under that. But those initiatives also exceed 2.5 million. If they are falling under 2.5 million, then the initiative will go into the portfolio, but it will not bubble up as major project oversight.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You see?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So we talked about what is enterprise planning, which is and who are all in enterprise planning and how we serve and who are our key stakeholders. And then we talked about the process and the portfolio that this process maintains, and then what goes into the portfolio and what criteria helps you determine. So we covered the people, we covered process. Now let's talk about technology, people, process, technology. That's how I sequenced it. So the product that's going to help us accomplish the enterprise planning process is called Decision Lens. This is Ohio's enterprise strategic planning tool. So if you when you log into Decision Lens, you should see a portfolio that is your own agency's portfolio. For training purposes, we created another portfolio which should have a caption of like DNR training or Medicaid training. So we can leave the training portfolio so you can play with it and understand how to maintain your own portfolio. And when you're comfortable with those activities, then we can get rid of the training portfolio. We will just go by word of mouth. But when you log in today, during the practice session, you should see two portfolios. One is your official portfolio that was created where you had submitted your agency initiatives sometime last year, and then you will have a training portfolio. So this is going to definitely help us in strategic planning process. But in addition to that, this tool also helps you prioritize initiatives through your own agency governance process, which can help you in some critical decision making with your business partners. This particular piece of it is the bread and butter capability of Decision Lens, and this is for your own benefit, for your own agency's governance process. You can take it to the next level, and when you're ready to do that, we can help you, we can arrange training for you, because it has a lot of different features from financial aspect, which is very specific to the agency. It doesn't have to be, we can see that information, but for the strategic planning process, we don't have, we don't use it as much. It will help your agency specific governance process. So, but that is for, we have identified that down the road. That's not part of the phase one. So prioritization of initiatives would be part of this, but there are some analytics that comes out of it. That's what we want to show the agencies how to benefit from that for your own individual decision-making process. So this slide, it segregates what are the responsibilities of agencies, point of contacts within decision lens, and what is the planning team responsibilities at the center. So let's go. I'm going to go through just the agency first. One by one. So you will work with a planning team to ensure proper initiatives are identified. So that is the criteria. What I mean, so if you individually look at the criteria and understand what initiatives goes, perfect, but we are always available. You can give us a call, send an email. We want to offer maximum support to help you with that. And you can add and update new initiatives or update existing initiatives. Okay, this is a new feature. This is a new feature in this phase. You were not able to do that in the previous release. So that's part of the training, how to add a new initiative and how to update the initiatives that are already part of your portfolio. So once we, let's say in the middle of July, after you're comfortable adding initiatives, maintaining your own portfolio, what we would like to do is, we already have identified from the previous go around who are the voting stakeholders within your agency. And we also visited your agency. Like, I may not have talked to you specifically, probably your CIO, or probably you when I visited, but we talked with every agency to understand their governance process. The reason we did that is state CIO has given us a directive, make it a tight integration with the agency process and be flexible. We have to fold it in with your processes, not to make it too difficult as an administrative burden. That's why we worked with every agency, understood what your governance process is, and you will see as I'm talking and Brent is showing the demo, how we made it flexible with different options. So you will have something to pick and choose depending on how the governance structure in your organization is operating. Okay, so we will give you a list of, hey, these are the people that have been identified as voters in decision lens. So you will be able to work with your agency folks and say, hey, remove this person, add this person should be voting, this person should be just reviewing. Whatever that information is, we will set it, okay, in decision lens. The only, I said maximum flexibility, the only request from DAS in voting is for finance. There is a criteria for finance. We want only the CFO or his designee to vote for that initiative, how this particular initiative, agency initiative, is rated against this particular criteria. So finance criteria, CFO or his designee. And security, only the CISO of your agency or his designee. Sometimes in some agencies, CIO or CISOs too, that is fine. Sometimes in some agencies, the enterprise security officer is the CISO for your agency. All of that is fine. The important point here to understand is that that particular subject matter expert is the one that needs to rate for that criteria for all the initiatives. The rest of them, however the agency wants to do, everything would be accommodated. So that is what, like, talked about the second point, determine the rating process that's good for your agency. That is your governance structure. In some agencies I talked to, I think for Department of Transportation, there is a monthly governance group that meets and then rates the projects and understands the initiative prioritization. It could be just the CIO and the business office or the director sitting together and determining that, however it is. And we will talk about it a little bit more detail, what AYC is, that is at your own convenience, or group facilitation. So that is the rating process, how your alternatives or initiatives are prioritized. And so we will address it much more detail in a few slides down the road. So when we are ready to start closing the submission, or I will tell you the point of context, hey, this week, why don't we close decision lens for submitting new initiatives, and let's do the rating. That time, you will work with your agency folks, whoever has been predetermined and given privileges to vote, to get the ratings and votes organized and prioritize the initiatives. And then it will open again, and then you can start adding and updating alternatives. The focus of this training is we will give you all the training required for adding and updating alternatives, because that's a little bit easier. So I would request you not to get overwhelmed about the rating process, because it needs a little bit of hand holding with all of you. So that is fine, and we want to provide that support, be it one-on-one agency visit. We can bring Decision Lens product team also to support you. Whatever your request is, we have multiple options. We can work with you, or we can have an open lab here. You're welcome here. However you want us to facilitate the first time, and then before you can start going through this by yourself. Many options are available, and so don't, oh, I don't understand rating process, it's overwhelming. Don't have to be, because it could be initially, but then we'll go through a couple of iterations and you should be okay. Finally, what we do, we take the information, we will analyze, enterprise will analyze all the information, and if there is a collaboration opportunity or recommendations from tech board, whatever it is, we want to share it back with the agency too. That is the analysis process. We have done that, not too much details, but in the last cycle we have done that, but yeah, I don't know if it was actively shared, but we definitely shared within DAS what are the agency initiatives to give heads up to the service owners and all that. But this time we want to do the process improvement a little bit also, to collaborate much more actively with the agencies. Okay, anybody has any questions on the agency responsibility side before I move on to the planning team responsibilities? Anybody online? No questions? Okay. So planning team's responsibilities, we will work with agencies and provide training. Right after this, we will send you job aids. We will send you videos of how this is happening in case if you forget how to add or update an alternative, or also like if you want to self-learn how to facilitate a rating process, we will send you videos for all that. We will take care of settings, the user settings, and providing permissions to whoever you identify. We can add them. We can take care of all that for you. We also already set up the agency portfolios, like whatever portfolio that you already had last time, when you log in, that is what it is. We did not do anything to that portfolio. So you will see what was submitted during the last submission cycle, and you will have the flexibility to update it. I'm assuming most of the projects, the status would be complete, but may not, may have extended or maybe on hold, or you would have the flexibility to update that. But we have already set up, what I mean is set up initial agency portfolios is some agencies like the smaller boards and commissions, they may not have been participated last cycle, but they're interested this time. So for those, we needed to create new portfolios. And then we also added a major project oversight. We cleaned up a little bit of the existing ones. So we did all those cleanup activities. So that's what it means. And what we also did is, in order to not get emails about ratings and all that, because this is only like portfolio update phase of the cycle. So we want to turn off rating so you guys won't get confused. So you will be able to do all that when it is ready to turn on the ratings and for you to bring the governance team together. Then we will say, okay, don't update the portfolio anymore, let's do the rating. That's when the ratings would be turned on, and so you would then you people you can do the group facilitation or at your own convenience ratings. Okay, and it would be specific. We would communicate with you. I promise we won't confuse you by doing something without giving you advance notification on that. And I think all of the ratings would be turned on at the same time for all the agencies, and then turned off at the same time for all the agencies. So that way you will have maximum time to submit all your alternatives. And then maybe I'm thinking right now, this is not set in stone, but 2 weeks for rating. And we will all have plenty of notice, so we can schedule meetings with the raters and then bring them together, and then the prioritization, and then close the rating. Then you can start updating the portfolio. And yes, Traylene.
Do you know what that timeline will be?
At this point, based on, I have to share this information with OBM every quarter. So, but I don't know if it's going to be calendar year quarter, because you will see some of the timelines at the end of this, how the collection is working. So I'm not able to predict exactly if it's going to be March and June, and it would be nice if it is like that. So if it is like that, it would be the last 2 weeks of each quarter. But I think I have to align it with the budget cycle and make sure what is that quarter is. That way then we know whatever quarter that was determined, then it would be at the end of that quarter. So we can say 2 weeks of that month. So, but once I understand when the ratings are going to be happening, I'll definitely give everybody advance notice. I also attend line of business discussion, so I am very familiar with which agency is working, like I know the CIO, so I can give them, and we know the point of contacts, we know planning point of contacts and decision lens point of contacts, because it could be different parts of the organization, but we will keep everybody updated so there won't be too many surprises during this time. We will try to make it as smooth as possible for you. And what we are also planning to do is analyze the agency initiatives. If it's something very specific to agency's mission, it probably will not go into the bucket where there are opportunities for collaboration. But if there is something that is a strategic initiative, like a machine learning or something groundbreaking, so we don't have a whole lot of ground covered in those aspects, we want agencies to collaborate. So this would be a good opportunity for us, looking at it like a bird's eye view from the enterprise level, which agency is planning which initiative. And this time we are also going to work with enterprise procurement very closely and enterprise architecture team very closely too. So we are working together with all those processes and trying to work on the process integrations with all of these teams. Any questions on planning team responsibilities regarding process responsibilities or decision lens responsibilities? Okay, so this cannot see the first part of it. That's okay. So this is a criteria list. What I want to say about this is these criteria, like look at this as the top, only 5 criteria. The first one, look at the parent one: business importance to the state, enterprise strategy and alignment, feasibility, risk, security, and financial. So these are embedded within decision lens. So these were set by state CIO and tech board about 2.5 to 3 years ago. What these are is the group, the cohort brainstormed and understood what are the enterprise level criteria, and they set these criteria. So when I was talking about the rating process, you'd say you have 20 initiatives in your agency. You take each of the agency initiative and say, this initiative, how much of business importance this initiative to the state, how much this initiative aligns with enterprise strategy, those kind of criteria. And this is what you would use during your agency governance process, rating process, to prioritize agency initiatives. This is just to give you, in case if you have not seen this, this is just to show you these are the criteria you would be using during the rating process. Okay, and we can also include this as a job aid. All of these are already defined, so it has a definition. If you're bringing in new people to vote on, it would be preferable for them to understand the definition of each of these criteria. So, so this is just to introduce to you. Some of you already familiar with this. Some of you probably seeing it for the first time. So, in case if you're wondering what is this rating process, what are we rating against? That's why I'm showing this slide here. Does anyone have questions on what this criteria is about? These are embedded in decision lens. Yes, Phil.
So the ratings that the agencies conduct, that's strictly for agency governance, or will DAS be looking at our ratings?
We will be able to look at your ratings, yes. But how much of those prioritizations are involved in the analysis, I'm not sure. We are looking at it, I think, the 5 of the items that I talked about. So one is there any shared service that's possible when we are looking at the analysis that can be offered by OIT? Is it a possibility for you to come to the center instead of hosting your own solution? So those are the questions that are part of the analysis process. Prioritization could be used in some other cases, but definitely not in the analysis that we were talking about, no. Last time, we just used the prioritization from the agency specific only. We didn't do the enterprise, because there were like so many projects, it would be too much to put all the prioritizations together. So the prioritizations were strictly looked at only from agency perspective.
And when you're in Decision Lens, if you right-click on those or whatever, it opens up and tells you what those definitions are. It's pretty extensive definitions, and that can be helpful.
Yes,
You
Traylon.
mentioned that you looked at it from an agency standpoint only right now, but is the end goal to be to put it all together as a state? All of the projects together in one large portfolio?
So the next release of decision, that feature is not available.
Okay.
So next release, Decision Lens product team has told us that because we have to look at it from the enterprise perspective, right now we export all this information and then we merge the spreadsheet and all. To identify collaborations itself, we do that. So Decision Lens has promised us that we would be allowed to have like an enterprise portfolio that merges all that. And I think if we need prioritizations also to be part of the portfolio, then we have to export all of the agency's ratings into that enterprise portfolio. So not knowing how all that is going to work, but the release itself is planned sometime in February or March of next year. So I'll definitely be able to answer some of the questions at that time.
So as we go through this training, are we going to see what's new included in this new release? Like what's added? So I'll know what that functionality looks like?
Not for the next release, but this release, the user privileges are amplified.
Okay.
So you would be able to add new initiative. Brent is going to demonstrate all that. You would be able to add, you would be able to edit. All this like you were not able to do it during the previous submission cycle. So this time it would be very different. And you would be able to do all that as part of maintaining your portfolio. Okay.
May I add a few words to
Yes,
that,
yes,
to that
please,
question?
please.
That question about whether decision can roll everything together it's called a continuous planning module. So today, each agency is going to evaluate or rate your own projects against the state's criteria in your own independent model. So if there's 28 or 27 or 30 agencies, you can all do that uniquely. In the future, because you don't necessarily want to be in another agency's model, right? That makes sense. But in the future, just all the results to look at a global enterprise set of initiatives, but you can have your own section that you can kind of put a boundary around so you can manage your own data, so that you can enter cost data, project information, update or edit project fields, and change the status from current to future to close and so forth, and not have to bump into everybody else's work. But that is a future capability. And the important thing to note here is that Ohio is part of a beta team, so that when Decision Lens starts opening up those modules, you won't be able to see those features until somebody flips the switch well into next year, and then you'll migrate over. But Ohio is going to have the opportunity to be, so they can kind of help drive and shape the requirements. Developers and coders at the Decision Lens product team can help build that capability to your specifications. So Decision Lens is really leaning on you to tell us how to make that capability work. And that's important, because many times we might purchase a software package and it's kind of a canned product out of the box and you're kind of at the mercy of it. But with Ohio joining Decision Lens to help shape those requirements, we think that we're going to be able to get the product to do exactly what you need to do. So I think that's important. So we welcome your feedback through the enterprise planning team, because they're going to be soliciting and eliciting those requirements from you, so that when they feed it to Decision Lens, they'll build it properly. And when she says February, we're on an aggressive timeline. It might not be till May, but the beta part of this, Vanitha's team will be within that group much earlier, probably in the next few months.
Yes.
So do we want to move into a short
Yes.
demo? Okay.
So everyone online, I want to let you know that the planning process technology overview is complete. Now we are going to do deep dive into Decision Lens demo, and then you will have an opportunity to do practice sessions too. So Brent from Decision Lens product team is going to take over from this point on, and I'll come eventually to talk a little bit about timelines and some closing thoughts and what we have available for product support going forward. Okay?
Good. Thank you, Vanitha.
Thank you, Brent.
For those that I haven't had the pleasure to meet, my name is Brent Peden. I have met several of you over the last couple of years. Ohio has had the Decision Lens software since, I believe, July of 2014. Some of you may have been exposed to it. Others of you may have not. I'm part of the customer success team. It's my responsibility to make sure that the planning team and the agencies are successful, know how to use the software, provide you any training that's needed. Some of you may want more deep dive training or on-site support. Others of you may just feel like you're a phone call away, and that's fine. That's what the team that Vanitha has, as well as myself, are available to be reached out to however you want. As Vanitha mentioned earlier, the software, Decision Lens software, is a product enabler to help you achieve your state and agency goals. It's not going to drive your goals. It's really just there to help you capture and prioritize your projects. I think she used the term bread and butter capability. The bread and butter capability right now for Decision Lens is two parts. One, prioritization against a criteria-based model, and two, resource allocation optimization, something I don't think we're pursuing right now, but maybe in a phase 2, you can use the software to do that. And if you want to use it earlier, by all means, go for it. Let us know. We'll train you up and spin you up on how to use the optimization feature, which you'll find that many DOTs across the country are doing that now to not only prioritize roads and bridges, but to also optimize their limited resources. In the future, of course, the third bread and butter will be that continuous planning, and there will be a fourth module that will join online with that called performance tracking. So if you ever have performance measures or KPIs for your projects, your initiatives, and your alternatives, if you will, you can track those in Decision Lens and kind of sense and respond over a period of time. I'm going to leave this screen up for one moment. I think we're going to just kind of take about a 2 or 3 minute pause, because to log into Decision Lens, you'll go to the URL that you see on your screen now. And my guess is, based on past experience, when we ask people to log into Decision Lens, and I'm going to do a demo first, but when we ask people to log into Decision Lens, folks may have not had their user account set up. You may have had an email that says, please complete your registration, but it went over to your junk folder. You may be a new user that somebody said, hey, just join into this training, and you're not even set up. But we have Rohan's email on the screen. If you're one of those folks that have not logged into Decision Lens, or you haven't logged in for the last 90 days and your account is locked, you can send him an email. He's in the back of the room. He can handle those emails. If you're not successful during this call to logging in, don't fret it. We'll handle you after the call. You call us tomorrow. Beneath's team will be available every day. I'm available every day. It's my responsibility to be at your assistance in this. So don't have any anxiety if you have issues with the user situation. We'll get all that taken care of. Now, while we're trying to do that, I am going to log into the software. And for those of you that have not seen Decision Lens or you don't remember it, I'm going to provide a very quick 30,000 foot view demo just to kind of give you an end state of what you're going to end up getting to. For those of you that are new and you're not used to a criteria-based prioritization model, I'll put it to you in the simplest way. Let's say you and your family are purchasing a car, and you have 10 cars out there that are available to you, and you want to prioritize those 10 cars. One of your criteria might be, say, cabin space. When you're younger, it might be engine power or curb appeal. But you're a family now, and you're thinking cabin space is a criteria. Well, you have 10 cars. All of those 10 cars have various cabin room. They might be small, or it might be like a minivan that's large. So when you're scoring your cars, your available alternatives, which are the cars, against that one criterion called cabin space or cabin room, those cars might fare along a series of scales like small, medium, very large, extra large. So those 4 points that I just pointed out to you would be your scoring scales against that one criterion. Well, the criteria tree that you saw that Venetia showed a few minutes ago, that's the criteria for the Enterprise of Ohio. There's some agency specific criteria, there's enterprise criteria, and the stakeholders that were involved in building the criteria feel that all of that criteria is explicit, it's all encompassing, it could possibly address all the priorities for the state of Ohio. So in a simple form, that's how criteria is described to prioritize. So I'm going to log into Decision Lens now. If anybody on the call cannot see the browser open, just let me know. It'll take me a moment here to type in that crazy URL that Decision Lens has. So give me a moment. Oh, no. All right, I have some bad link here. Are we connected to the internet? Okay.
Use Chrome. Let's go here. Go to Chrome.
Chrome, do we have a link set up already?
We don't, but
Let's see.
present on this data.
Here, let me go to your slide deck.
Okay. It's a new tab. Yep.
There we are. Okay, I'll go ahead and begin the brief demo. I'll try to keep this short so we can maybe get on to a kind of a hands-on exercise and review the two items that are on slate today. And I don't know if Benitha mentioned this earlier, but this is not full-fledged training. That's more of an introductory training. We expect that some of you may have questions, and again, you'll be able to reach out to anyone in the planning team to accomplish the two tasks, which is updating initiative information and then managing your voters through the ratings process. When you log into Decision Lens, you'll be taken to a lobby. If you're an agency POC, your models will be listed in the section of the middle of your screen titled Portfolios. My guess is you'll have your actual agency portfolio, and you'll probably have some sort of a training portfolio that you can use to conduct any training or play around with the tool and so forth. I'm going to go into this training portfolio, and with the end in mind, I'm going to go right to the results, which is the prioritized list of initiatives for your agency, and that will be listed under the sensitivity analysis screen. When you go to the sensitivity, this is the end results of what you might see when you prioritize or rate your initiatives against the state's enterprise criteria. There's a few filter bars off to the left, and you'll notice in the middle that the criteria weights are set to default equal, but of course, not all of these criteria or priorities are set to equal. Some may be a little bit less or more relative important than the others. And at some point in the past, the state of Ohio and the stakeholders, members of DAS and OIT, actually set these weights, and you can go to that automatic filter under criteria weights. There's this little link called custom priorities, and in that link you'll see an acronym SOH, that's State of Ohio, Enterprise Criteria Weights. Those are the actual state's criteria priorities. 30% for business importance to the state, which includes agency priorities as well, enterprise strategy, feasibility, security, and financial. And this thus drives this rack and stack 1 to N results off to the right. If you want to further look at these results, you can add a column, and there's all sorts of data in here. Agency column, your OU1 status, is it a major project, yes or no? And of course, if you have those categories already set up, which you will when you go through the add initiative process, you can then further filter on whatever categories you have. Additionally, off to the left, you'll see this bottom gray link titled Alternative Categories. All of those categories I mentioned a moment ago are available here for further filtering and sorting. So just this one screen on its own sometimes may drive conversation or strategy or analysis at your agency level. Now, how do we get here? Off to the very far left, you'll see this navigation pane, and in it you'll see several links. There's about, 14 or 15 pages here. This is all the pages that are available in Decision Lens, and they are flowing in a logical, sequential order from top to bottom. From the very top, we see the very first link or the very first page in Decision Lens titled Criteria. This was the screen that the criteria was first built in, which started with a set of 5 parent criteria: business important to the state, enterprise strategy and alignment, feasibility, risk, security, and financial. Those criteria are meant to be explicit, meaning that there should not be too much redundancy or overlap between them. We all know that you can read these titles and you might think of interdependencies between them, but it's very important that the definitions that were created by the organization, which was done some time ago, made these explicit so they stand on their own. And then underneath that, you might have some of these parents with indentured children. The children are intended to fully describe each parent. The next screen, rating scales, are those scales that we talked about moments ago when I described how when you're purchasing a car and you're looking at, say, cabin space, high, medium, or low, you can see that each criterion at the lowest level in that nested tree earlier that you saw has its own set of scales. And it looks to be that most of the scales are 5-point scales. And of course, when your voters are going through that process of scoring or rating the initiatives against each criterion, they'll have definitions available in Decision Lens that they can quickly open up, as we pointed out here in the room earlier, to guide them in the process. So for example, if you're rating an initiative against the criterion reduce complexity or increasing efficiency, you might score an initiative, say 75% of the points, if the initiative reduces manual processes and consolidates information into fewer data sources and future iteration with streamlined information into a single data source. And each definition will lead the voter to say, you know what, that new initiative will probably reduce complexity greatly, or, you know, it doesn't reduce complexity all that much, obviously scoring it a little bit less, you know, for that one criterion. So this process, of course, repeats itself over and over as your voters are rating the initiatives against each criterion. I'm not going to go through all of these, of course. You can do that on your own time, and you can review the definitions in Decision Lens, or you can export the definitions to Excel and go through them as you go through your rating process.
Brent, I have something to.
Yes.
So all these are features of Decision Lens, and we'll definitely be using some of this information for criteria as part of the rating process. But at this time, the focus is to add and update alternatives. So because of the time here, we will focus on it. And then when it is rating process, yes, we will dive a little bit deeper into each of the criteria. And then we will do, sometimes it could be one-on-one with the agency too, to help the raters come in, bring them along too. So I'm going to request Brent to shift the focus here slightly to alternatives and or initiatives or investments. We use any of this terminology loosely on add and update. Okay, that would be the.
Okay, and that brings us to the alternative screen, which is actually where we are going to go first and take a look at all of the alternatives that are in the model as existing projects or initiatives. And Decision Lens does use the generic term alternatives to describe whatever it is you're prioritizing. In this case, we're prioritizing initiatives, and this is where they are housed, in the alternative screen. So I'm going to shift momentarily back to the slides, and we are going to actually, the section, we're going to go through two sections. The first section is adding and updating your initiatives in the model. Ideally, this would be the agency POCs doing this. Your model probably already has whatever initiatives were loaded in last year, and you may need to add additional ones in the upcoming cycle. I'm not going to go through the slides. The slides are available to you after this call, as well as a job aid will be sent to you. I think it's a 1 or a 2-page job aid, which clearly describes the process. Instead, we're going to actually do it in the software. On my screen, I will show you how to do that, and you can follow along and do this as well as kind of a training exercise. So for those of you that were successfully able to log into Decision Lens and access the lobby, and I'll go back to the lobby for a moment, you should have your agency's model showing in the lobby. So for example, if you were with EDU, education, you will probably have your EDU model, as you can see, as well as an EDU training model with the title training right at the very end. I'm going to pause there for a moment and ask anybody in the room, or is anybody having problems logging into the software? Or does anybody not see their training model? We have one person, you don't have a training model?
I can't log in.
Okay. So Rohan, what was your name? I'm sorry.
Robin?
Robin. Have you logged into Decision Lens before?
Yes.
Okay. More than 90 days ago or just recently?
This morning.
This morning, and you did log in successfully? Okay. So did you, as a forget password or anything situation?
I'm getting a network error.
Oh, a
I
network
might have
error.
the wrong host name, but I don't know.
Okay.
It was only flashed up there for a second, but
Right.
I thought I had it. But
Yeah, Robin's not able to log in. We don't know if it's just an internet issue or because she did log in successfully this morning. Anybody else in the room unable to log into Decision Lens? Okay. And with a head nod, can you see some sort of a training? Okay. Is it your agency, by the way? Your agency? Okay. And those of you that are on the call, if you have any problems, when we start, maybe you can email Rohan. Or again, if you have any problems, we can get with you after this call. We can go one-on-one with screen share or come to your location as well. I'm going to go in to my training model. Right. Or yes. Yes. I'm going to go into my training model by just clicking anywhere in the white bar, and it takes us to this, I guess, a portfolio overview screen, and you see a lot of information here. How many criteria, how many alternatives, 5 participants. And off to the left, in that sequential list of links to each page, you'll see about, I guess, the fourth link down, the alternatives. This is where you, the agency POC, is going to manage your project data in Decision Lens today. In a year, in the future, we'll have that continuous planning. The screen might look a little differently. But today, each quarter, as Vinitha said, there might be a 2-week window. Prior to that, where the ratings are occur, you're going to manage your data, update the projects, insert any new ones. So if you click on the alternative screen, and you'll see your current list of alternatives, you'll see a big orange button up near the top titled Add Alternative. To the right of that orange button, there's a small drop down. There's 2 options that you can do this with me. One of them is titled Quick Add. That's only going to allow you to add the project title. We're going to do the little bit longer project update, which is, project add, which is called Add Alternative. So if you click the Add Alternative within the button, a new window is going to open, and it's a rather long window with a scroller that you'll see all the data fields that are asking you to enter for your new project. We're going to ask you to do that, and you can enter a fictitious project in your training model. And I'll go slowly and add my project. I'm going to just call this my new initiative. My guess is you'll probably have this information in Clarity or in Excel or a business case that a project owner is submitting to you. So you'll need to get this information. There's not a lot of fields. I think there might be a dozen fields or so. Some of them are drop-down lists. The first one being a description. So you'll enter a project description. There'll be some guiding principles or some information that's asking you to enter. For example, what kind of technology project is it? What's the purpose of the project? What are the outcomes? Now, thinking ahead, when you're entering your project description as well as the other fields, later down the chain when the voters or the raters are going to score or vote or rate these initiatives against the criteria, you want to provide them some good information because they'll be able to see all this information in Decision Lens when the voting window opens. So provide them with the necessary information so they can enter a sound and accurate judgment. My guess is the agency drop-down list will either have just your agency listed or the others, but pick your agency. There's a hierarchical, it's not a very good word I can speak, or organizational framework that you can use. I believe there's some items in the list that should resonate with you, but there's an OU1 and an OU2. Again, I'm not familiar with your business, but you probably are. There's a project sponsor text field. Be sure to list who the project sponsor is, which is the executive sponsor over the division. Estimated budget. Again, each one of these fields has some descriptive information to guide you on what to enter. Yes, we have a question in the room.
The estimated total budget.
Uh-huh.
Do we just do how much we're going to spend that fiscal year, or does say overall?
That's my question, yes.
Okay.
So that would be the amount that you have planned to spend for the life cycle of the project. Let me see if it says here, it's a little bit not clear. The estimated budget for the overall project life cycle. Okay, for the overall project life cycle. So, yeah, whatever the start and end date that you have, if you have any other initiatives that are planned, and you can accommodate the start and end date in this.
So yeah, you have the start date and end date. So if it's a 3-year cycle, you enter the start and end. The life cycle cost would be the total cost for that 3-year period. The question in the room was, is it a fiscal year cost or a cycle, life cycle cost? Life cycle cost.
That's a very good, so training was saying that since this information is going to be shared with OBM, that definition, the life cycle, is actually fitting in the major project definition, okay? So I read that, and now we know that DAS and OBM are collaborating. So some of this definition like project sponsor, budget, start date and end date, all those should resonate with the information that we are sharing. So yeah, take that into context. No, that's a very good question. Any other questions that are online, please feel free to ask, because it's important to get the clarifications now.
If Vinitha was too far away from the microphone, she's just making sure to remind everybody that's on the call. If you have any questions, please jump in, interrupt us whenever you see fit. You'll continue entering the data for the project. The major project drop-down is binary. It's yes or no. She introduced you to the classifications earlier as to whether or not it's a major project.
And enterprise.
There's some definitions for whether the project is enterprise or agency.
Enterprise or agency. So if it is a collaboration with DAS to consolidate with the DAS enterprise, then you select enterprise. If it is something very specific to your agency, select that. If you're collaborating with a different state agency, not with DAS, then you have to select agency collaboration. All this, the definition is right there, so you will know which option to pick. And then finally, you have an attachment piece. So agencies have been asking me what it's optionally you can add attachments. So if you have identified an alternative as a major project, if you would like to attach some documents, please feel free to do so. And if you're adding information like renewal of the products and all that, and if you have an Excel spreadsheet, you would like to share that with DAS, please feel free to attach that.
Okay, once you enter all of your initiative information, simply click Save, and it will appear in your list at the bottom. You can see on your screen or on my screen, I entered my new initiative. If you're doing this on your own, then you should see your new project or your new initiative listed in the alternative screen, ready for ratings later when that activity is to occur. So that's the first piece, and that is adding a new initiative. However, before the ratings occurs, you may have a need to update existing information for the initiatives that are already in the model. Or let's say you just entered an initiative and you made a mistake and you have to go back in and update the information. You can easily do that by hovering over the initiative, and when the initiative is highlighted, there's a small pencil icon that will appear just to the right of the initiative title, which allows you to click it, and a sidecar from the far right of your screen will open, allowing you to scroll through the initiative information and make edits on the fly quickly and easily. There is a gearbox in that sidecar. You probably will, it'll be a very uncommon thing for you to click the gearbox and delete, but you could delete an initiative if, say, you entered one and you didn't mean to, or if some point in the future you had to delete an existing initiative. If the title of the project needs to be edited, you can do that by just clicking on the title or clicking on the descriptive field, as well as any other drop-down or text field that you see in the list of alternatives. I'll pause there for a moment. You can continue to add a couple of initiatives to your model if you want, or you can just sit by, ask any questions. We're going around the room answering any small tactical questions of clicking here or clicking there. We'll give it just a minute or so before we move on to the next topic.
So, how did we change the name of the alternative?
Okay, you can watch my screen. I'm going to click Test Project. And I know it looks great out here, but when you hover over the area and double click, it opens up kind of in this white space and you can edit the title. It's a good question. That's actually non-intuitive. I've heard that question before. People wonder if
Hey, Vanitha.
Yes.
Vinitha's coming over to the microphone. Okay.
Yes, Greg.
Vanitha, this is Bill. Under the alternatives, there's two buttons. It says Add Alternatives and Manage Submissions. That's not showing up on my test screen.
But do you have the Add Alternatives orange button?
No, I do not. It's blank. It's the white space. It says alternatives and it's a white space.
Okay. My guess is you might not have the permissions properly set. Rohan, I'm sorry, what agency model are you in, sir?
DOD.
DODD.
Okay. Do you want to check and see if he's, I guess, a
Portfolio owner.
portfolio owner in the model? And if he is, then maybe we can go back to the instance level, the people icon,
And Vanitha, that may be set up under Diana, and as you know, she's not here today.
Ah, that makes sense.
he
Yes.
may be a reviewer.
Okay.
He might be a reviewer.
Yeah, I think that's why if you would so who is going to be maintaining the portfolio for DODD, Bill? Would that be you or Diana or?
Still under discussion with Michelle.
Okay, yeah, I mean, if there is a requirement, we are willing to flex it, although decision lens, and Michelle asked me this question yesterday. I'm glad that we are discussing during the training. Product strategy team, because we are going to empower the portfolio owners to maintain their own portfolio, we are giving them add, edit, and delete privileges for their model. We also have Decision Lens, because it's a cloud, it's a software as a service in cloud. They have backup services every 4 hours. So hopefully nothing drastic should happen to your models, but it is always recoverable in 4 hours time window. But they also recommended that we give only one agency person portfolio owner role. That's why I'm asking this question. But if there is a need, we can definitely look into it and have provide proper support for that particular
That's
agency.
fine. I can still follow along. I just was curious why it wasn't there, but I think you figured it out.
I think like my support person probably would. Cahill, William Cahill probably.
Can you verify he is a reviewer? He was a reviewer, which
Yeah,
means he
yeah.
can see everything.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
he's
can see it.
changing. You're seeing it now? Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And with large implementations such as this, we would expect that there will be all sorts of user management issues to work through. But the coordination between your agency, POCs, and the planning team, you'll be able to figure out how the roles and permissions are going to work out going forward. Decision
Yeah,
will handle it.
Yeah, it's good. I can see him now. Thank you.
Oh, great. Okay. We'll pause for another moment, please, if anybody has any questions before we move on to the next activity.
Can I just share an experience while we're waiting?
Yes, please.
So when I added my alternative, it did save, but the screen was grayed out.
Oh.
I couldn't do anything. I couldn't move. I couldn't.
Did you kind of hit refresh on the browser?
Hit refresh, and then
Okay.
then it eventually showed up.
Yeah.
I just did it twice though.
So somebody in the room did remark that he had kind of a Flash browser issue where the screen went gray on him. We find that the Chrome and the Firefox works very well. Internet Explorer, if you have an older version, Decision Lens is, it's a company that tries to stay on the cutting edge of all the browser updates out there. So if your state is using an older browser version, that could create some hiccups along the way. Please be mindful of that. Oftentimes just refreshing your browser and clearing cache, clearing history will optimize your experience. We apologize for that, but yes, that's pretty common. It's very different.
I was using Internet Explorer.
Oh, Internet Explorer, there you go. And you might be a version or two behind whatever Microsoft has put out. The military environments are very, very tough with Decision Lens because they are very, very tightly controlled in the security firewalls. Okay, Vanitha, shall we go ahead and move on to that second tutorial? I think we're done with...
Everyone comfortable with adding and editing? It's pretty intuitive.
Yep. And you can follow the slides. They're available to you. And Vanitha's team will send out I think it's a 2-page job aid. It's like a PDF. You can print them out, give them out to your stakeholders. But that last exercise of adding and updating alternatives is strictly for the agency POCs. Your voters and reviewers or your analysts and so forth generally will not have those permissions. You don't want them going in there and breaking project data and things like that. Okay, so the next activity is the ratings process. After your model is updated with the initiatives, it's current, you draw a line in the sand, the planning team says, okay, we are about to turn on the ratings process. There'll have to be some coordination. You'll have your voters and your stakeholders identified. The most important thing before you start getting in and voting and who's voting and who's not voting and so forth, you'll need to decide what your agency's ratings process is. And Decision Lens can handle any process you want. We've seen it all. Many agencies may say, you know what, we've got 3 or 4 stakeholders and they're all subject matter experts. They bring their past experiences. They're core to the functions of our agency. We want them all to rate the projects against the criteria. And Decision Lens, one of its signature capabilities is to allow you to bring that subjectivity in, aggregate it, and lay out an overall one-to-end prioritized results. You want that disparity or the difference in the subjective inputs. One person might score moderate against the criterion, another stakeholder might score moderately high. And you want the Decision Lens to bring that in. And you can think of that old show, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, where you ask the audience and they almost always get the answer right, but they have difference of opinions with their little clickers, and some might be scoring medium, some might be scoring medium high, but the aggregate results are far superior than one voter. Other organizations like to do more of a group facilitation, where you bring everybody in a room and you allow them all to discuss it, and you might have one vote. Everybody agrees, okay, we all say moderately high. Or you bring everybody in a group facilitated environment and you talk about it, but then they still allow separate voting. So Sally may vote high and Jimmy may vote moderately high, and that's still okay. That's a very common practice, and a lot of organizations really want that. So you've got 3 different scenarios there where you can have everybody vote at their convenience from their computer separately, and then you can bring everybody or disseminate your results afterwards. You can bring everybody together in a group and have one single vote, or you can bring everybody in a group and still have everybody discuss but vote separately. There may be another creative method that your agency prefers, but there's a few examples of what we've seen organizations that are very successful at bringing in their ratings process. Once you decide your ratings process, then the utility of the tool is just very academic at that point. You just go through and use the tool as an enabler to capture your ratings. So I'll pause there before I go back to the tool. And if anybody has any questions on how you determine a ratings process, please ask or speak up now. Otherwise, we'll give it another moment and go into how you have your voters rate. Okay. Once the enterprise planning team opens up the voting window, which let's just say it is a 2-week period, there'll have to be some coordination or communication, either an email or a verbal phone call or whatever, to your raters to say the open window is now open and there's a suspense date of such a date. And once the voting window is turned on, your voters will log into Decision Lens, and they probably won't see the portfolios listed below. They don't have permissions to the portfolio, but what they do have is a task listed at the top of their screen that says, go rate. More specifically, rate alternatives for the title of your portfolio. In the uncharacteristic or rare opportunity, you have a voter that might be a member of 2 agencies. They'll have both agencies listed right here. Because remember, there's about 28 or 29 models in there, but they will only see the agency's model that they're assigned to. My guess is it would be just one. Once they click the Rate Alternatives task, they'll be taken to the Ratings Overview screen. And when they first do this, there'll be a few pop-ups. The pop-ups will guide them through the process. This is very helpful if they're doing this from their own computer without you standing over their shoulder, and they're doing it on their own. They can read through the steps, they can close the pop-ups, and they'll be taken to an orange button. If the voter is somebody that voted last year, they probably scored the initiatives that were already in the model. And you can see I have a progress bar if you're watching my screen that shows, you're about 90% complete because we added a new project a moments ago. And they can just click the big orange button that says continue ratings, and they'll get some sort of a welcome back pop-up. Unfortunately, this small tutorial that I'm showing you on the screen is not something you can do right now because the voting window is closed. So you're at the mercy of just kind of watching and following along what I'm doing. But again, this is not a very complicated process. This is what your voters will see. What they'll generally see when they first perform this task is a one-to-one voting screen where they have the new initiative listed at the top and the very first criterion listed at the bottom, which is revenue generation. And you're being asked, or your voters being asked, to rate the initiative with respect to this one criterion, revenue generation, and the definition of the revenue generation criterion is listed below, guiding your voter to enter their best judgment, and then a next button appears. And they go through this combination of initiative to criteria voting until they get to the end, and they're done with that one initiative. Now, if you have one initiative, you're talking about a handful of ratings. It's not going to take very long. If your agency has 50 initiatives, you can do the math, and you can see that that can be a rather laborious task. This is intended to be a fruitful exercise, but a very important one. So there are some important features in Decision Lens that will make this process a little bit more efficient. First off, if you need definitions of your rating scales, for example, if I need to enter 100% versus 75%, your voter can just hover over each one and it'll bring up the definition. Or you can click the icons off to the far right and open up sidecars, and the sidecars have all sorts of definitions for the criteria, as well as sidecar definitions of the project and all the project information that your agency POC entered at the start of this process to help the subject matter expertise rater score the the most optimal rating. But notice in the upper right corner these icons with 3 little tiny dots. Those icons allow you to enter your screen into multi-view. So for example, I'm rating this Oaks, this AD Cleanup Oaks project. By clicking the 3 little dots, I have this option at the top of this pop-up titled Rate This Alternative in Multi-View. When I click that link, what happens is, there we go, I can bring up the initiative that's up for rating, and all of the criteria are listed on the same screen, meaning I can just go through and enter my judgments one at a time. Once you become comfortable with the criteria and they're very familiar to you, you'll be able to probably do this with much more efficiency than say, your first round of judgments. The other 3 circles, there's 2 of them, next to the criterion allows you to kind of flip the screen in 180 degrees, meaning you can have one criterion listed at the top, all of the initiatives in your model listed at the bottom. Some folks like to focus on one initiative at a time and blast through the criteria. Other raters like the other perspective where you bring up one criterion, focus on that as a key driver, and then move through all of the projects in your model. I'll pause there for a moment and open up to anybody that has questions on how the voter is seeing the screen when they log in to do the ratings process.
Hey, Brent.
Yes, sir.
This is Greg Buskirk from OFCC. As I look at this, I think about VSTS in the cloud, and that's just another tool we use for agile project management. But does Decision Lens have any on the radar in the future for an enhancement to take this and tie it to Excel and have an active link to where we can look at it in a spreadsheet, do this all in one view, and hit a button, push, and it goes up to Decision Lens? And VSTS, Microsoft, has done that with their Agile development tool. Mm-hmm. That's why I brought that up. It's a very nice little download, and the Excel is tied to that tool.
Yeah.
I can, Greg, I can answer that question for you. Decision Lens has that feature, already has that feature, which is what leveraged during the last cycle to obtain the spreadsheet from the agencies and import it at the enterprise level. Now we are changing the model for continuously updating the model. It will not be like a every year, beginning of a fiscal year type of activity, because we are turning this information and sharing with OBM and with different stakeholders within DAS. We would like agencies to actively update even at the conceptual stage of a project or an initiative. So we that's why we are not encouraging the agencies to use the spreadsheets here. There's definitely an option available, but spreadsheet means then you wait and then you collect all the information in your project management tool and then import it in Decision Lens. Whereas where we are going with this is the moment you know a project is there, just put it in. Some agencies are like, okay, let the governance group see it, and once they approve, we will put it in, and that is fine. But according to the major project oversight implementation, the guideline from the enterprise is if as soon as you know, you put it in, so that way you don't have to wait for later. And that is why we are not showing how to use the spreadsheet model here. The option is definitely available, and if you're still interested, Ken and I will visit your agency and we can show you how to do it. It's very easy, very quick to do, but we are just not recommending that practice with the agencies anymore.
Okay, if it's like a one way, then I agree with you. But what Microsoft has done with VSTS, it's an active link. It's bi-directional. So if it changes in the system in the cloud, it changes your spreadsheet. And you'll say update. So it's a dynamic bi-directional link. So a lot of times, instead of clicking through all this stuff, it's a lot easier just to bring up a spreadsheet and see what got updated, bring that down, or make an update and push it up. So just that's a really nice feature. If you've never seen that in TFS or VSTS, take a look at that. And I was asking, because I'd rather work in a spreadsheet and have that bi-directional active link. So if
that particular feature for rating, I don't think is available. Only for alternatives, importing alternatives. For ratings, I think you're talking about ratings with spreadsheets.
The voting process, obviously, you have whatever, let's say there's 17 criteria here, and each criterion has a 5-point scale. I mean, first of all, Decision Lens has API connectors where you can go bi-directional, and there are organizations that feed in, there are organizations that feed out. So the answer is yes and yes. Decision Lens can do it. It's really whatever the state wants to do. So Greg, you bring up a very good question. I think as this process unfolds, you should probably make recommendations, because the key point that Vinitha made is that the groundwork is being laid for continuous planning. If Decision Lens was only being used once a year, and there are a lot of organizations that use Decision Lens, like the NFL, there's like tons of football teams, they do the draft once a year, they use everything in Excel, they load it into Decision Lens, they go through the draft process, then they shut it down for the next year. And going through Excel to Decision Lens is a much better way. But if the state of Ohio is going to go in the direction of continuous planning, to where you need to manage your projects and your initiatives kind of on a continuous basis through the life cycle of the fiscal year, year after year, then I think that they have ideas in mind to where you don't want to do it a one-time deal and go from Excel to Decision Lens and have prone to errors. But again, Greg, as you're seeing this unfold, I think you should probably stay close to making recommendations to see how this could all work, because some of your ideas may actually be better, especially if Decision Lens already has API connectors built in. I mean,
Okay.
Does that help for now?
Yep.
Okay. Great topic, by the way. Any other questions on what the voter sees? Oh, and by the way, when they get to the end, here, let's see if we can find some sort of a, okay. Oh, there we go. Up at the upper right, your voter has this kind of a progress bar. You can see I have this tiny little gray sliver here, meaning I've got some missing votes somewhere. But I'm going to go ahead and click on View Results. And I want to bring this up because this is rather ambiguous to some raters and some agency organizations. When they get to the end and say, hey, take a look at my results here. If you have one rater at your organization or one voter, what you're seeing on the screen is that one voter's results. If, say, you have 5 raters, the rater's only going to see their results. They're not going to see the aggregate results. Now, the POC and the planning team can train you how to look at the aggregate results, which is nothing more than going back to the sensitivity screen that we first showed you during that demo. That's the aggregate results. But the other point is when the voter or the rater is looking at these results, and you can see Oaks is at the top, unfortunately, it's a small limitation in decision lens. They are only seeing these results with the criteria set to the default equal weights, which if you remember in the demo, they were 5 parent criteria at 20% each. So these results are assuming that the criteria are set to 20%, okay? And they can download the results in Excel, and they can review the results and so forth. But just kind of keep that coordination in mind between your rater and your agency POC. The POC sees everything when they go into the portfolio. The voter is only going to see their results with the criteria set to default at equal weights of 20%. I just wanted to make that point. Another point that Greg brought up about providing feedback, if you ever need to provide feedback, if you ever click the support link up to the top right here, your complaints, your enhancement ideas, your comments or questions, those will generally go directly to the Decision Lens help desk. If they're frivolous and small and easy to take care of, they'll probably contact you directly. If it's a little bit more elaborate or more process-based, something that's meant for the enterprise planning team, either send it here and they'll forward it over to the planning team, or disregard the Decision Lens support link and send them email directly to Vinitha and Rohan and all of the other members of the support team. There's another link titled Learn. If you have a user account in Decision Lens, you have access to a rather large library of videos, and the videos are incredible because they're tiny. I don't want to spend more than 5 minutes on a video, but if you need to know how to upload manually enter a project or rate or vote on a project, there's probably a 2-minute video that can quickly be disseminated to your stakeholders. There's also, if you ever have a PMP certification credits to achieve for the year, go ahead and go through some of the videos and take the small tests, and you can manage your PMI credits because it is endorsed by the PMI Institute. I just wanted to point that out as well. Any other questions before we move on to, I think, wrapping up and going through, I think, some timelines and so forth?
I have timeline, and then I also have next steps.
Next steps and timeline. Yeah. So we'll kind of take a minute pause here to clean up any more questions that you may have from anything, any questions whatsoever, because I'll be passing the microphone back over to Vinitha, and we'll kind of move away a little bit from the Decision Lens tool.
Hey, Ryan, I do have one other question. I'm sorry, Brent.
Yes.
Sorry. I do have one other question. With all the enhancements that's coming about, or things that you'll hear from other agencies, whatever, is there a place on your website we can go to see that list of enhancements, what's going to make into the next release?
I'm actually marking that down as a question that I can go back to our product team. I know that there's going to be tremendous socialization of those future enhancements. There's nothing right now that I could think of. However, I think you bring up a good question, because especially if you're aware of what those enhancements are, you can kind of help message back to the planning team your thoughts. So the planning team, who's also joined at the hip with our product team, are trying to shape the requirements in such a way that they build those modules in a way that benefits Ohio. I think that's important. I think you need to be aware of that. So please let me take the action to kind of mark that down, feed that back to my superiors and my product team so we can get some sort of a communication as to what those will be on the table or the horizon, so you're aware of them. Okay, Greg?
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, thanks. Anything else? Okay. Want me to go back to the slides?
Yes.
Okay. And, I think there was a topic about the,
Yeah, I think this I covered.
I don't know if you covered it specifically about
I can.
roles.
Yes. There is no timeline slide. Okay, I'll talk about it. I thought we introduced a timeline slide. So this last slide here, want to reinforce the point that all other agency voters can vote on multiple of these criteria, but the security and financial would be coming from security, specifically from your security officer, CISO, or
specifically subject matter experts for security. And then finance, CFO, or his or her designee, they should be able to. And what we will do is once we identify who those people are for each agency, we will set their privileges so they'll be able to see only those criteria for those projects. So it'll be pretty simple if they want to do it on their own. There was additional slide here which I'm not seeing, but that's okay. So it was just a timeline slide. Very simple bullets were there. One was if it is possible, we want fiscal year 19 initiatives by the end of July. Most agencies were actually asking us, can we input fiscal year 19 initiatives because we didn't have the training and we wanted to retrain them because we have changed the privileges. We waited until now, but now it is ready. What we are going to do is make sure everybody that attended training today are portfolio owners when decision lens module. If you need a change in that, you can always send us an email or call us and let us know. We can make a change to a different person. But at this point, whoever attended the training would be portfolio owners, and you would be able to update, add alternatives in your model. And if you can do that by end of July for 19 initiatives, and then we'll start slowly ramping up 20 and 21 initiatives by the end of September. End of September is somewhat like a loose timeline, but we want to stick to that because I think it's aligning with the operational budget timeline as well. Okay, so somewhere between these two entering of alternatives and updating the models, there would be some kind of a rating training and rating period, and we will offer you all the support that you need to get your raters trained and train you so that it would go smoothly. Okay, so what the next steps that you need to do is log in and then clear the initiatives that are already there. Not clear, clean up the initiatives that are already there. So if you want to change the status of it, if you want to update the description, if you want to extend the end date, change the budget, all that you can do. So you can do that, and then you add new initiatives for fiscal year 19. Okay, and the second training is scheduled for June 25th. Invites have gone out for that training as well. If you want to invite additional agency folks to that, please feel free to do that. So after the training, we will reach out and find out who are your agency raters are, and we will set up the rating period. Up until this point, at that point, we will determine what model did you choose for rating, and then we will determine what support you need from planning team and decision lens support team. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, reach out to your planning analyst, send us an email, call us, visit us, whatever options you have, please feel free to do that. All right, I think at this point the training has ended. If we are going to be here in this room until 12 o'clock, if you have any questions, you can ask us, raise the questions now, or call us later. Yes, John.
You said that if we wanted to change the portfolio owner to somebody else,
Yes,
can
yes.
we add somebody? Can there be like, okay.
Yeah, yes. Yes, we can do that. Delete somebody, add somebody, all that is possible.
Okay.
All right. Okay, if you don't have any questions, those that are online, I'm going to disconnect the Skype session now and stop the recording. Okay? Thank you. Hey, thank you, Tina. Have a good day, all of you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The timeline slide wasn't.
It says stop recording.